Alright, ladies and gentlemen, about 2 weeks ago we did a tier list ranking the best DPS characters for free-to-plays at C0R0, and today we're going to be doing the exact same thing when it comes to some of our supports in the game. Luckily there's not quite as many supports as there are DPSs, but still I don't want to take too long doing this. With that being said, first of all, like I said, the criteria: C0R0 support characters, no constellations, no signature weapons. Although, you know, if they're a standard character, we can consider like C1, C2, since, you know, we do get those for free for basically every single anniversary, and you can also lose your 50/50 and get them from standard banner. Although, let's be so real, that's not going to change much for Jean and Mona for the time being. So, yeah, also the DPSs they'll be supporting will be C0R0. When it comes to what makes a good support, it's first of all, how many characters can they be used for? How many meta characters can they be used for? So those are the kind of things we're going to be considering, what their impact is, how replaceable they are by, for example, other 5 stars, which are more accessible maybe, or maybe with 4 stars. So yeah, you know, kind of considering just how universal they are, as well as just how high they can make a character reach its full potential. So yeah, with that being said, I think the criteria is clear enough. If not, you'll probably catch it as we go along the list, and I just yap a little bit about my thoughts. With that being said, let's just hop right into it. But real quick, if you don't pull any Genshin characters, then I have the perfect thing for you, and that's today's sponsor, lootbar.gg. You can use Lootbar to top up on your favorite games like Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail and save up to 25% with special great value offers such as the 6,480 Genesis Crystals pack available for the first week of the new version, guaranteed character and rerun bundles, and the all-in-one bundle, which now applies on Xbox and PS5 as well. And with the recent Genshin anniversary, you can get double on your first top-ups. And with the release of the Miliasha Wonderland, you can also top up Chronal Nexus directly on Lootbar with the same trusted services as the Genesis Crystals. When I decided to buy one of my friends a Welcome Moon, all I had to do was enter in their UID and region, and I received the purchase in literally less than 10 seconds. Creators like DuckTV and Jello Impact are also collaborating with Lootbar, so they are trustworthy, and they also have thousands of positive reviews on Trustpilot. Also, new users can get 10% off, and returning users can get up to 8% off in the first week of the new version. So be sure to check out Lootbar with the link in the description. Back to the video. Alright, well, with that out the way, I think we might as well go ahead and start off in the tier list, and we'll just start off with our 2 standard banner characters, of course that being Jean and Mona. Now when it comes to how I would rank Jean and Mona, I probably would have put Jean higher in the past, although for the time being I think I'm only gonna go ahead and put her in the C tier. I think, you know, she is useful. Obviously every single animal character in the game is useful because they can hold Viridescent. Then again, Viridescent isn't quite as strong as it used to be, just because, you know, the duration on it isn't as long as certain other buffs are nowadays, or some certain other rotations, but it's still a nice damage increase. You also have the team-wide healing as well, which can be very useful for Farina, and Farina is of course one of the strongest DPSs in the entire game. So I think C tier is fair enough. In the past I probably would have ranked her at a B tier, but I think I will keep her in the C tier for now. Now next up we have Mona, and Mona is actually a pretty interesting character. I probably would have put her around the C, maybe even D tier, because she's, in the past she was niche but not very good, although now the Hexorite buffs and the fact that also some of her constellations got buffed, I can see her tentatively being placed in the B tier. I think her placement could potentially go up because of future characters, or also potentially go down because maybe I'm overrating her slightly. But I do think that B tier is an okay choice for Mona. You know, in the past she had some decent teams, especially in freeze teams, although unfortunately her C1, you know, doesn't work with freeze. It doesn't really extend the freeze duration. Although nowadays that doesn't really matter, because normally when you play freeze teams, you're not freezing the enemies anyway, just because there's so many bosses nowadays in the Abyss. So yeah, Mona will be going in the B tier for now. She's probably the character I can see moving around the most. I haven't gotten to play with her brand new buffs, so I can't really speak from personal experience here. This is slightly more theoretical, but I think B tier I wouldn't be too upset with putting her in there, although, you know, I wouldn't argue against anyone who wants to put her either higher or lower. Next up we have Venti, and although he did get some buffs, I'm still gonna go ahead and put Venti in the C tier probably. I don't really think they changed much for him from a supportive point of view. Also, I should mention this is support and sub DPSs. You know, main DPSs aren't included, but anyone who's a support has sub DPS, which can't be played as a can't be played or isn't mainly played as a main DPS, will feature on this list. Venti's main DPS playstyle got upgraded a bit, but even then I wouldn't play him over someone like Wanderer, Shao, Chaska, stuff like that. And then when it comes to his supportive capabilities, I wouldn't pick him over Kaza, so C tier, possibly even D tier, although I think I'll be nice and give the Animal Archon a C tier. Zhongli will always be useful just because of how strong his shield is. I definitely feel like he needs slight buffs, definitely, when it comes to his utility. When it comes to... Actually, never mind, we won't be talking about that. That's actually future version stuff, so never mind. But yeah, you know, Zhongli, I don't think his value is gonna go higher in the future. Although I still think he's in a decent spot, so I'll just put him in B. I mean, Zhongli is like always going to be useful. You can't go wrong placing Zhongli in your team. No matter what elements you're running, he can shred it, and then he just gives you a lot of sustainability as well, interruption resistance with his shield. I mean, basically the strongest shielder in the entire game still. So yeah, we will be putting Zhongli in the B tier. Like I said, his offensive capabilities, both when it comes to his damage as well as his buffing capabilities, aren't that good, but he's always going to be... I'd say he's more useful than Jean or Venti, so I will put him in the B tier. Although maybe I'm biased because Zhongli is my favorite character in the entire games ever since I started playing. Next up we have Albedo once again, another character which benefited from the Hexerite buffs. Also one I haven't been able to experience. I haven't pulled Albedo, although I think the Hexerite buffs make him better, but I don't think they make him a lot more valuable. I'd still probably rather pull a Shalonen over an Albedo. So I'll put him in the B tier for the time being. In the past, I honestly probably would have put him in the F tier. But I think maybe he can go in the B. Maybe F or D tier in the past. Nowadays, probably B to C tier. You know, he definitely has more team use cases. He was probably one of the bigger winners of the Hexerite buffs. So I think I'll be generous and give him a B tier for the time being. Like I said, kind of like Mona, I feel like his placement is pretty volatile. We'll just have to see how future characters benefit him, and if we're maybe overestimating just how big the buffs are for him. Like I said, I've actually never played Albedo, and I haven't had time to test the Hexerite buffs, so C tier would be the more conservative placement, although maybe for the time being I'll say B tier. I wouldn't recommend pulling Albedo. I wouldn't recommend pulling him in basically any circumstance. But, you know, for the time being, he's okay. I don't really see him going up unless things change greatly. Next up we have Kazuha, who a lot of people say fell off. There's a lot of retroactive judgment saying, oh, you know, Kazuha wasn't even the best animal character back when he released. That was Sucrose. Has Sucrose always been good? Yes, although, you know, I think, let's not rewrite history here. For a long time, Kazuha was considered basically the strongest character in the game. Is he still the strongest character in the game? No, but does he still have the best grouping in the game? Probably. Very easy animal shredder. You can do a lot of cool double swell stuff with him as well. I will still put him in the A tier. You know, in the past, he definitely would have been an SS tier character. So, has he fallen off? Yes. But is he still very, very good? Yes, he is. So I will go ahead and put him in the A tier. Next up, we do have Raiden Shogun, who as a unit, considering the fact that she can be played main DPS, support, sub DPS, could maybe be an A tier unit. When it comes to DPS wise, I think I'd place her C tier, but when it comes to her supportive and sub DPS role, I think I'll go ahead and put her in the B tier. You know, she's a very good Hyper Bloom trigger, although at the same time, so is Cookie, and then Cookie's first of all a 4-star, second of all also provides you with a little bit of healing, which can be useful sustain wise. So I will go ahead and give Raiden the B tier for her supportive and sub DPS capabilities. She is a good electro sub DPS. She's very easy to use, but when Fischl is just so strong, it's kind of difficult to place her above. It's rather difficult to place Raiden Shogun very high when Fischl just does such a good job of being a off-field electro applier as well as damage dealer. Also new Hexerite buffs as well, which is very nice for Fischl. Raiden Shogun is definitely a character I would like to see buffed, so yeah, I think B tier is fair enough for her. Next up we have Kokomi. Kokomi is a bit of an odd one right now. I think I'll still go ahead and put her in the C tier alongside Jean. When it comes to like Farina teams, I still think someone like Jean is stronger than Kokomi, but then Kokomi has a lot more of her own unique teams, so I'll still go ahead and give her the C tier. Maybe she's more deserving of the D tier, although I think there is another Hydro healer who deserves the D tier, which we'll be going on to slightly later. So yeah, I'll go ahead and give C tier to Kokomi. Next up we have Shenhe. Shenhe, I'll go ahead and put the B tier in. You know, she's good in Skirk teams, she's good in Ayaka teams, she's good in Rising teams. Escoffier, you know, although Escoffier is a brand new cryo support, I actually think that instead of making Shenhe worse, I actually think she makes Shenhe better. And Shenhe, actually, you can get her C1 for free from the 5-star Constellation Selector, which I actually think is a pretty valid point in her favor. You know, it doesn't apply to Kasa, it doesn't apply to Raiden, but it will, or even Venti it doesn't apply to, but you know, it does actually apply to Shenhe, which is nice. Her C1 is pretty nice. Kokumi's C1 isn't very useful. Albedo's, I don't believe is quite useful unless they changed it. I don't quite remember, but I don't think they did. So yeah, Shenhe, actually the fact that you can get her C1, very nice. Makes building her a bit easier because you don't need energy recharge, and then it's also easy if anything messes up in the rotation. And then, like I said, Escoffier did give her a bit more value, so I'll go ahead and put her in the B tier because cryo teams are actually not very strong now after Escoffier's release. Next up we have Yae, Miko, and Yae is an interesting one. You know, Yae is a character who I'm not really sure if I would... I don't know. I think Yae is worthy of the B tier. The thing is, once again, Fischl is just kind of better. But at the same time, there are situations where I'd actually sometimes prefer Yae Miko over Fischl. For example, on characters which don't deal in Electro, like if they don't apply Electro, Yae Miko can maybe be a bit better. The problem is her field time and her rotations aren't the best, so maybe C tier is warranted. Although I think for the time being, I'll probably put her in the B tier. You know what? Maybe some people think Raiden deserves A tier or B tier. Some people maybe believe Yae Miko deserves B tier or C tier. You know what? Let's put them in the B tier together because Raiden and Yae should never deserve to be separated again. So you know what? That's the logic we're going for this. Next up we have Yelan, and I'll go ahead and put Yelan in the A tier, I reckon. She is, you know, once again, pretty decent sub DPS. Used to be ranked higher than she is right now. Fell off slightly, although I don't think it's her fault. I think it's just kind of the way that brand new supports have been coming out. Hasn't benefited her. You know, she's not really a best in slot in many of the best DPSs in the game right now. You know, she's a decent option for Skirk. For Flynn's, her rotation time isn't ideal, although it's usable. You'd just probably rather use Aino or Farina or Colombina when she releases. Same thing for Nefer. Once again, her rotations don't really line up with Nefer's DPS rotations. So, you know, she's definitely still viable. But I do think I will put her in the A tier. You know, where she excels in is in more kind of old school teams. But I still think both her own personal damage as well as the slight supportive capability she has, as well as just the general strong Hydra application, is enough to go ahead and put her in the A tier. Next up we have Nahida, who is kind of a toss-up between the B tier and the A tier for me, just because there's so many characters in the B tier. Maybe I'll go ahead and place her in the A tier for now. You know, very strong Dendro application, very easy, very long-lasting. Does give your entire team EM, which has become a bit more important in Nodcry, kind of like how EM once again became important in Sumeru. Nefer teams, she is good on, so I think maybe I would have placed her in the B tier, like, just before Nefer's release, but with Nefer's release, I might as well just go ahead and place her in the A tier. Can be an argument made that Lama replaces her. Also, argument can be made that Lama strengthens her. I think for the time being, I'll go ahead and put her in the A tier. We'll reevaluate the tier list for sure by the time we get to the end of it. Dea... D tier. I mean, I can see people saying F tier, although I think I'll go ahead and give Dea the D tier. You know, she's an okay off-field pyro applicator. Of course, Doran did just release, and he does kind of do that role better than her. So yeah, but you'll probably not be seeing as much Dea as you used to before Doran's release. Even before Doran's release, we weren't seeing much Dea, but Doran's probably the nail in the coffin. But we'll still give her the D tier. I mean, I guess she gives you some decent interruption resistance. You can get some of her constellations. Hers, I don't remember, it's either her C1 or C2, which is decent for a sustain, and then that one's decent for a DPS. Of course, DPS I wouldn't recommend whatsoever. At C6, it's like a C0.5 Hu Tao, and you can just get C1 Hu Tao for free now anyway with the banner selector. So yeah, D tier for Dea. Next up we have Baiju. Baiju once again was a character who benefited from Farina's release. After Farina's release, although after some of the newer characters, I'll probably go ahead and slot him back into the C tier. He's very similar to Jean, where, you know, he could have been beater in the past, but we'll go ahead and put him in the C tier. He does have a niche in Dendro teams. You know, if you don't have Nahida, you could use him in, say, for example, an Al-Haytham team. Could use him in the Vlad teams if you want the team-wide healing. You know, if you don't max out Farina buff, you can definitely go ahead and play Baiju. But yeah, I think nowadays I'd probably slot him in the C tier. You're probably rarely using him. And this is where you kind of realize just how strong some of the newest characters are, because we basically have no one in the top 2 tiers, but that changes with Farina. Farina I'd probably consider the best support in the entire game still, even 2 years later. Sub DPS capabilities, phenomenal. Hydro application, good. Buffing capabilities, very, very strong. Even if Nodcry has seen a bit of a separation from damage bonus ones. Basically, even a lot of version 5 characters really loved having Farina, and of course the version 4 characters also absolutely love her. So I will go ahead and probably say that Farina, it would be my number 1 DPS in the game. Novelet teams, Skirk teams, Hu Tao teams, other Kino teams she's also usable in. There's just a lot of DPS teams where she's very good. And now, of course, is she best in slot for something like a Mavuika team? No. Is she best in slot in a Nefer team and a Flynn's team? No. But or a Varesa team? Once again, no, unless you're playing the niche team with Shenyun, but even then you're just better off with the Overload team. So, is she as meta relevant now as she was in the past? No, but is she still an insanely strong unit who's good for a lot of units? Yes, so I'll go ahead and give her the SS tier. Next up we have Shenyun, who I valued a lot on her release. I'd say she's maybe a slightly better Jean. She feels slightly less clunky to play than Jean, in my opinion. And, she does also have the niche plunge teams, which is something that Jean can't really offer. And then she can also hold Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayer. So I'd say because of the TTDS, as well as the fact that she does also enable some plunge teams, I'll go ahead and put her in the B tier. So she's probably the best team-wide healer here, although, still probably doesn't warrant going out of the B tier. Next up we have Chiori. Chiori is actually a pretty solid character. I just wish her C1 was base kit. Her weapon's amazing. I'd actually probably sooner pull her weapon than I would pull Chiori herself. When it comes to her placement, I think I'll maybe put her in, I'd say, the C tier. The problem is a lot of the units that she has decent synergy with, someone like, for example, Shallonen. Shallonen doesn't have a geo structure. Albedo's better nowadays, but I don't know who your main DPS would be on that team. I don't know, are you running something like Arlecchino, Durin with Chiori and Albedo? Maybe that's a decent team, although it seems a bit too niche. I feel like you'd probably rather play Melt, Vape, Overload. So I think Chiori will unfortunately have to go to the C tier. I definitely could see her going up in the B tier. Maybe she could swap with Yaimiko. Although I think just because of Geo's spot in the meta right now, I'd maybe give Chiori the C tier, even though I kind of wish I could place her higher. Although there's quite a few units in the B tier, so I feel like I think I'll have to go ahead and stick her in the C tier. Next up, though, we do have Sijuin. Sijuin and Daya for me are probably the two worst units in the game right now. I feel like there's basically no reason for her to exist. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like if you would have made her a 4-star, she would not be like the most forgettable unit in the game. I feel like out of every single limited 5-star character, I definitely do think that Sijuin is the most forgettable. It would have been really nice if she was like a niche 4-star for, I don't know, like freeze teams. That would be decent. For example, as a Farina replacement if you don't have Farina. But no, instead they went ahead and made her pretty damn... They made her an atrocious 5-star, so yeah, that's unfortunate for her. Oh wait, I forgot, Chi-Chi exists. F tier. Okay, people were probably screaming at their screens for the fact that I did not include Chi-Chi. There you go, Chi-Chi is included. Now I remember why I created an F tier. It's because Chi-Chi exists. I have pulled way too many Chi-Chis in the last 3 years. My first 2 years of playing Genshin, no Chi-Chis whatsoever. New Year's, just turned 2024. After that, I think I've pulled like 4 or 5 Chi-Chis. So yeah, F tier for the emotional trauma, as well as for the fact that she's just a very bad unit. But anyway, next up, we're basically... Okay, we're gonna go ahead and put Emily in the A tier. Not because she's A tier in strength, or she's a decent character strength-wise. I feel if there was a niche but decent tier, Emily would be in the niche but decent tier. Kinich is definitely her best in slot team. Is Kinich a top tier DPS? No. Is he a good DPS? Yes. But is he top tier or most meta? No. So is Emily gonna go in the S tier even though she's a pretty packed character kit wise? No, but I'll go ahead and give her the A tier, I guess. You could argue B tier, but then again, she's so good. The thing with the B tier is that you don't really have characters who are best in slot in their niche other than Shenyun. But then plunge teams are the best plunge DPS in the game doesn't even want to use Shenyun. So I think she deserves to beat her, whereas, you know, Emily is the best character in the burning niche, although she is basically the only character in the burning niche. So yeah, I'll go ahead and give her the 8. She's not as good as the other niche supports. Next up we have Shallonen, who I was debating putting in the SS tier. She also synergizes very well with Farina, although I think I only want to have 2 units in the SS tier, so I'm gonna go ahead and give Shallonen the S tier instead. Very, very good either way. Very good option in Movika. There's a question whether you want to run Bennett, Ian, San, Sitlali, or if you want to run Bennett, Shallonen, Sitlali. So I will still give her. She's definitely still one of the best in slot options in Movika teams. Not really in Veresa teams, not in Skirk teams, not in Flint teams, not in Nefer teams. Who else? You can play her Nivelet Hyper Carry, although I don't feel like Nivelet's strongest teams are Hyper Carry anymore. I feel like he's slightly better as a DPS enabler hybrid. So in the past, I definitely would have put her in the SS tier, but from late version 5, we've kind of seen this shift to more niche supports. And because of the rise of dedicated supports, I feel like she's just about fallen down. I'd say she's maybe still a top 3 support in the entire game. You know, she gives you great coverage for your entire account, but there's just too many other support characters who basically benefit the strongest DPSs in the game, so I feel like they'll land in the same tier as her, but it's preventing her from going into the SS tier. But then we have our second SS tier character, that being Sitlali. Sitlali is kind of the opposite of Farina in that she isn't the best unit for a lot of characters, but she is the best unit for some of the strongest characters in the entire game. First of all, Mavwika, she enables she makes it so that the strongest DPS in the entire game is able to reach her damage ceiling, so that definitely is SS tier worthy. And then also, you know, she's very strong with other top 10 DPSs like Arlecchino. Nivelet freeze teams also pretty solid. Can play her in a Skirk team as well. Maybe not her best use, but still is an option. So yeah, just the fact that she can hold Thrilling Tales, Obsidian Codex, and then enable melt reactions as well makes her a pretty solid option. So I will go ahead and put her in the SS tier. I do think of the niche-ish supports, she's probably the least niche and also the best. So yeah, I will go ahead and give her the double S. And then next up we have 3 characters, so I'm gonna rank the same, that being Escoffier, Enefa, as well as Lauma. They're not dedicated supports, but I'd say they're dedicated supports plus some other functions for their main DPSs. So for example, Lauma isn't only a Nefer dedicated support, but being a Nefer dedicated support is what makes her so strong. And then you also have her Hyperbloom capabilities. Escoffier isn't necessarily a Skirk dedicated support. She's also a cryo support, but her best in slot use is as a Skirk dedicated support. Enefa isn't only a Flint dedicated support, but that definitely is her best use. But then she can also provide you with Lunar Charge as well as a shield. So she does, and also over Lunar Charge reactions. You know, she enables quite a few teams, but definitely her best role is as a dedicated support. So yeah, here you have 3 characters whose best role is a dedicated support for one of the top 5 DPSs in the game. And then they also have some other functionalities. I feel like I definitely put them in the same bracket. So yeah, I'd say this is probably the S tier. And then now we have our brand new Doran, who is maybe the hardest character to rank right now. I don't know whether to give him the SS tier or the S tier. The thing with Doran is he's a very, very, very strong support. The problem is his support isn't actually that strong for the strongest units in the entire game, but then it's very strong in bringing up some of the weaker units in the entire game. If this is a unit ranking, I'd put Doran in the SS tier because of his DPS capabilities as well, but DPS capabilities are not considered in this list, so we're gonna go ahead and put him in the S tier. You know, he's solid in Movika teams, he's good in Veresa teams, good in the Nivelet teams, and then some of the other units he's good with are some of not necessarily the strongest in the entire game. I'd say he's maybe... or do I put him in the SS tier? The thing is, he's on banner right now, and if I put him in as an SS tier, I fear like I'm making him out to be like a must-pull character, which I actually don't think that Doran is a must-pull. I definitely feel if I'm a Skirk player, or if I'm a Flint player or a Llama player, I definitely feel like these guys are much more must pulls than Durin is if you're like a Varessa main, a Novelette main, a Mavuika main, stuff like that. So I think I'll go ahead and place him in the S tier for now, although maybe my views on this in the future will change. But yeah, that's probably my support tier list ranking. Let me know your thoughts down below. What characters would you move? Very open to some open discussion down in the comments. Just make sure to go ahead and keep it civil. Let me know who are your top 3 supports in the entire game. For me, it's either this or it's either this. I'm not entirely sure. With these being my bang on top 2, and then either Shalonen or Durin being my top 3. These guys I lump together, so you know, they are definitely in like the top 6. But whether they are top 3, it's probably easier if you just pick one of these two, because these guys are so functionally similar, I'd say. So yeah, with that being said, like I said, that's my tier list. Let me know your rankings down below. Who are your top characters? Who are your bottom characters? Who would you change their position greatly on this tier list? Who you disagree with? Who do you agree with? With that being said, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.